Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, for many football fans, pre- or end-of-season tours offer a rare chance to catch new signings in action, get a sense of the season to come. But Leeds supporters have instead found themselves checking Foreign Office travel warnings and their club facing criticism from human rights groups. That is because Leeds have announced their tour next month will play games in Myanmar. The regime there has been accused of ethnic cleansing, and violent clashes are still going on in some parts of the country. So should this tour go ahead? Joined by Labour MP and Leeds fan John Mann, also from the Leeds United Supporters Trust, Graham Hyde. Gentlemen, thanks for your time. Graham, you're both Leeds fans. Graham, I want to start with you. Why has the owner decided to go to Myanmar?
It's a very good question, one that's puzzling many Leeds fans. I think the question will probably come down to, in the first instance, looking at some of the commercial tie-ups that he has in his wider organisation. In terms of groundbreaking places to go, Leeds often sort of push boundaries, and that would be seen as a pioneering choice, if certainly one that brings a lot of controversy with it and many questions in terms of its ethics.
Yeah, John Mann, ethically, what do you think?
Well, the UN won't be happy about it. You have to, yes, we can see why this country wants a well-known football team, our football team out there, because it gives them credibility. But, this is the worst refugee crisis in the world. Huge amounts of violence and deaths. It's horrendous what's going on in Myanmar, or Burma as it used to be called. And frankly, I think from a football point of view, I go along. I was there on Saturday. I'll be there at the away game next Saturday. The senior people at Leeds need to be sorting out the team, and that hasn't been done yet, rather than dragging them halfway across the world for a very dodgy regime, and one, of course, where I'd be very surprised if there's time for any Leeds supporters to be able to apply and get visas to go. And of course, we've had fans who've watched thousands of matches, every single match anywhere in the world. There's, I think, a likelihood that they won't be able to get to this match, considering the timescales and the difficulty getting visas to this country.
Graham, can I ask, are you going to try and go?
Personally, no. We're aware of several people that will look. I had a very, very quick look, and I know that you can get flights out of Manchester for about £500 odd. But I think availability will be a challenge, as will sort of confidence that the security is there in place. From our point of view as a trust, we believe that sort of fan safety is paramount. Therefore, that was one of the key things that we considered. There will be individuals who haven't missed a single game in years, so we'll look to try and achieve this if at all possible and get to visit an interesting place. Because I think it's worth understanding that whilst the people are obviously football mad over there, this is a separate entity from a government piece. But you can't separate the two when you're talking about the horrific things that have been happening in Rakhine State.
Yeah, Graham, just to give us an indication, the Supporters Trust more widely, what has the reaction been? I know you're talking about people visiting a new country, but, the bottom line here is that it's a regime that's been accused of ethnic cleansing. What have the supporters as a wider entity been saying?
I think as a wider entity, the fans are sort of puzzled and dismayed by the decision. Yet again, it's another decision made by the club that seems to court great amount of publicity, but perhaps not for the right reasons. I find it very interesting. John mentioned that he was at the game against Barnsley on Saturday. There was, prior to that game, an Amnesty International-backed refugee match that took place at Thorpe Arch between sort of refugees who support Leeds and refugees who support Barnsley. So it seems a very, very strange decision by the club, and I think fans are calling on the club to have a think about the ethical impact of this kind of commercial tie-up.
John Mann, statement from the club. Angus Kinnear, your managing director. Myanmar, one of the fastest growing nations in the southeast of Asia, passionate about English football. It gives them an opportunity to meet new fans. They're going to do some outreach work. And indeed, Amnesty International saying that the club could use its leverage here to call for an end on the crackdown by the Myanmar authorities. If that is the case, is there a case for going?
If the club goes there and does that, I would applaud that. We'll see if that happens. If the club goes there and makes that statement, that would be very, very powerful. I doubt if that will happen. If that does, that would be quite a game changer in the whole picture. But, you know, growing football nation, this is one of the lowest ranking football nations on the planet. There are many fascinating countries Leeds have never played at, with huge growth of potential fan base, including across Asia, that Leeds could be going to, and spreading the good name, getting new fans and doing good commercial business. I find this a particularly worrisome choice, because it looks to me that the regime in Burma wants to get some cover for the atrocities going on there, and here's a good way of trying to suggest to everything's normal in a country that in essence is at war.
Graham, yeah, what do you think about that as good PR for Myanmar? And if indeed there is a large discontent within the supporter base, is that something you would take to the owner, an official letter calling on him not to go to the country, perhaps?
Well, we already reached out as a trust this lunchtime to the club and stated the fact that there was discontent amongst the fans and that they might want to consider the impact of such a trip. I think it's worth pointing out that whilst it's very difficult to separate government and FA within countries such as Myanmar, they are under FIFA regulations separate entities, and football is separate from the government. However, it is impossible to have something like this without there being some sort of reflective propaganda value that can be leveraged by the government from any such trip. I'd like to see that the club take the stance of making some sort of statement, whether there is some commercial tie-up that leads to perhaps donations to refugee camps in Bangladesh that are dealing with the displaced people, or whether there is a wider statement about why the club is doing this for positive good, rather than simply leveraging commercial value.
John Mann, as a supporter, if people are indeed thinking about going, I mean, put aside the issue of ethnic cleansing as described by the United Nations, would you feel safe as a fan?
Yeah, I mean, the fans will be safe. This is such a regime there that anyone going will be safe. Whether people can actually get the right permits to go is another matter, and whether there's time for that, I would be surprised. If you're thinking of going, I'd be acting straight away and getting onto the embassy. But I think a statement on what the government's doing will not be welcomed by the government there. And the idea that organisations such as the football organisation in Myanmar are separate from the state apparatus and the military who've run that country until very recently, and in reality still do, is, well, it's not the case. It's one and the same thing. This is in order to give that regime some international credibility, and therefore if Leeds are going, they need to make clear their disapproval and the disapproval of all decent people in this country about what's happened, about the horrendous numbers of murders and the vast numbers of refugees who had to flee over the border.
Mr. Mann, just finally, because I've asked Graham the same question, they've obviously reached out to the club. Is that something that is someone in your position? Would you reach out to the owner, ask him to reconsider?
We'd be very happy to talk to the owner if he wants to come down to Parliament. There's a healthy group of Leeds United supporters down in Parliament, and he'd be very welcome to make contact with us, and we can give him some guidance and pointers if he's going to what the club could say.
OK, John Mann, MP, Graham Hyde, thank you very much both for your time.